Australia, a land of staggering beauty and vast, unforgiving wilderness, but behind the sunburnt landscape and blue horizons lies something unsettling. Every year, thousands vanish across the country. Most are found, some choose to disappear, but a few, they are never seen again. And the reasons remain a mystery. Today, we descend into the unknown. These are Australia's 10 most baffling missing persons cases. Welcome back to Shadow Matter, where we travel into the darker side of our world with a focus on stories and cases from Australia and New Zealand here every second Sunday. If you're a fan of true crime podcasts, then why not check out mine? Search Shadow Matter on Spotify and listen to morbid stories while you pick your kids up from school or pretend to work. Today, we are taking a look at the 10 most baffling unsolved missing persons cases in Australia. If you've been watching this channel for a while, then you know that I resonate well with missing persons cases, and that's because I am the family member of a missing person that's still unsolved. It's an ongoing investigation. So I do know what it's like to be the family member of a missing person, just putting that out there. Every year in Australia, about 38,000 are reported missing on average. 95% of these missing are found within a month. The other 5% are placed into a category called long-term missing. In Australia, this can happen if the person is missing for more than 3 months. If the police have exhausted all avenues of investigation, then a high judge or coroner can legally rule that the missing person is dead after 7 years. It's cases like these that are often shrouded in clouds of mystery and often sneak past the realm of believable into the bizarre and unexplained. The kind of cases that leave you scratching your head and asking, what the hell really happened? Without further ado, let's get into it. Number 10, the disappearance of Australia's first celebrity chef. In the golden age of Australian television, Willi Koeppen was a household name, a German-born host with charisma to spare. But in 1976, he vanished, left behind a car parked, wallet untouched. No body, no farewell. Nothing. Rumours swirled, mob hits, espionage, secret lives. But the truth? Still locked away, like an unaired episode lost in time. Wilhelm Paul or Willi Koeppen hasn't been seen since the early hours of February 29, 1976, when he vanished without a trace. His well-recognised pale blue combi van was found parked with the keys in the ignition and the sliding passenger door wide open. But there was no sign of the famous chef. Willie was born in Berlin, Germany in the 1920s and started his culinary career with an apprenticeship at the prestigious Hotel Adlon, but emigrated to Australia in the 1950s after World War II, where he married fellow German immigrant Karen, and together they purchased tea rooms in Olinda, a quaint little town in the Dandenong Ranges. The young couple rebranded the restaurant as the Cuckoo, introducing the smorgasbord to Australia in 1958, and their business exploded, making the restaurant one of the most popular and famous in the country. At the same time, Willie had launched a glittering radio and television career with his own TV slot called The Chef Presents, becoming the first celebrity chef in Australia. The 5-minute cooking program appeared on the local Channel 7 station between 1957 and 1959, making him a local celebrity. Copen also presented a radio program on Melbourne station 3XY. The Cuckoo played host to the rich and famous, from entertainers and celebrities to senior state and federal politicians. However, with the success of fame also came its downfalls. Willie and Karen's marriage began to fall apart, and it was reported that both had taken up with other lovers, but despite this, their business flourished, and they also had 3 children together. Eventually, the marriage fell apart and Willie relocated from their marital home. Karen began to associate with a group of close-knit people, including well-known barrister Tony Bonici, whom she partied with regularly. It was on February the 28th, 1976 at 8 p.m. that a very noticeable drunk Willi Koeppen stumbled into the Cuckoo restaurant. Looking for an outlet to vent his frustrations, he picked on one of his employees, waitress June Vink, and in an abusive tirade threatened to sack her. Willie's estranged wife Karen was called to the restaurant to calm him down, but things only escalated. Willie accused Karen of being in a relationship with a member of her posse, Dr. Bernard Butler, who was also in a steady relationship with a mutual friend of the couple. The doctor was called to help defuse the situation, and en route to the restaurant, he stopped by his surgery to gather some strong antipsychotics in case they were needed. Managing to calm Willie down, the pair continued their drinking session at Butler's request. According to Butler, Willie arrived at his surgery. They continued to drink for another 45 minutes to an hour, and then Willie departed, but before he went, Willie apparently received a mysterious phone call at the surgery. This was just before the doctor saw Willie out of the surgery, and apparently he let Willie get into his combi van and drive home? Like, come on, mate. Didn't you ever watch a TAC ad? Wait, they probably didn't have them back then. Anyway, Greg, you missed the stop sign. If you know, you know. This is the last time that Willi Koeppen is seen alive. The next morning, about 4 a.m. on Sunday, February 29, the cleaner arrived at the Cuckoo restaurant, finding Willie's combi van parked in an unusual location. He normally parked near the rear kitchen doors, but she found the van parked in a lower car park, hidden from the main road above. Also strangely, she found the kitchen doors ajar, highly unusual for the very security-conscious chef. Willie had vanished without a trace, but the alarm wouldn't be raised for several days, when he failed to return to take up a planned holiday in Queensland. The police investigation was told the cleaner and the local police officer, Philip Fears, both saw a mysterious dark-coloured, American-style car parked outside the Cuckoo restaurant, facing the wrong way in the early hours of the morning. They believe it could be a Ford or a Chevrolet. This car has never been found, but it could be the key to unlocking this mystery. The following 5 decades have seen multiple theories to the mysterious disappearance. Willie was known to have some mental health issues, which he documented in a letter, expressing certain ideologies. A possible motive for self-inflicted harm? Who knows? His behavior became erratic, and he even threatened his wife with a rifle. Some have suggested he was dealt to by the doctor or perhaps an associate of Karen's. Possible motive for murder? Anonymous letters did appear over the years, one suggesting that the celebrity chef's body is buried at the site of a dam that was being constructed at the time of his disappearance. Other theories have espoused gambling debts to a mob hit. However, none have been substantiated. If Karen was a person of interest, she took her secrets to the grave in 2002. Butler, while still alive, denies any involvement. To this date, the mysterious disappearance of Willi Koeppen remains unsolved. Number 9. Sarah McDermad, 1990, Cannonook Station, Melbourne. Sarah McDermad, 23, never made it home. Bloodstains, drag marks, and a woman calling for help. Her car abandoned, along with her possessions. No leads, no CCTV. A quiet platform and a moment forever frozen. Gone in the space between trains. An unsolved missing persons case that has intrigued Australians for over 30 years and ties to another set of unsolved disappearances and murders in the notorious Melbourne suburb of Frankston. 23-year-old Sarah McDermad was from a Scottish immigrant family and lived in Frankston with them. An after-work social game of tennis with her co-workers sees Sarah and her friends get onto a train at Richmond Station on the 11th of July 1990, sometime after 9 p.m. Sarah and her friends missed the train to Cannonook Station and instead opt to board the train to Caulfield, where they will switch trains to Cannonook. The group departs from Sarah at around 9:30 p.m. at Bond Beach, and Sarah continues on her journey to Frankston. At approximately 10:20 p.m, the train arrives at Cannonook Station, where Sarah disembarks. This is where we have to rely on witness statements, and things get a bit hazy because it's the last time anyone sees Sarah McDermad alive. It's a few hours later, after Sarah hasn't returned home, that the alarm is raised by her family. Her brother goes to Cannonook Station to look for her, but only finds her red Honda Civic in the dimly lit car park. The next morning, the police are notified and the investigation begins. What they find is Sarah's car, a lighter belonging to her on the ground, and what appears to be bloodstains on the concrete next to the car. The car is still locked. The blood stain had a trail of droplets leading from the car to a nearby bush where a disturbance in the soil was noted, indicative of something or someone being dragged. An extensive 21-day air, sea and land search followed, and police interviewed witnesses who were at the train station that night. According to them, 3 people positively witnessed Sarah getting off the train at 10:20 p.m. and saw her walking down the platform towards the car park where her car was. Witnesses also described hearing a struggle taking place in which they heard a woman shouting, "Give me back my keys." Other witnesses claim they saw a group of suspicious-looking persons, 2 men and 1 woman, loitering in the car park. Despite the investigation, the search was eventually called off and Sarah McDermad was never found. Several theories have arisen over the years. The first notable one is that of Frankston serial killer Paul Denyer. However, the timing of his crimes do not coincide with Sarah's disappearance. Frankston was known in the previous decade to have several women being murdered in a spate of killings called the Frankston-Tynong North Killings, which has never been solved. So it could tie into this, but again, the timing doesn't fit, and neither does the MO. It came to light in recent years about a gang of ne'er-do-wells who may be linked to Sarah's disappearance. One person of interest was Jody Jones, a prostitute with a penchant for violent robberies. She was known to police and had associates and links to the Frankston area. Jody was interviewed by police when her associates informed police of her confession to the murder of Sarah McDermad. They told police she was at the Kananook station the same night and was accompanied by 2 other men. This was corroborated by several witnesses who stated they saw this group at the train station that night and the struggle that took place. However, police did not have enough evidence to convict Jody at that time, and she died 14 months later from an overdose. While it's most likely that Sarah was murdered, her body has never been found, and the case remains one of Australia's most high-profile missing persons cases. I've talked about Sarah McDermad a couple of times before, and I've actually got a full-length video on that case. Actually, I've got a whole series on the Frankston saga, so I'll leave a link for those in the description below. Number 8, William Tyrell, the boy in the Spider-Man suit. September 2014, 3-year-old William Tyrell played in his foster grandmother's yard, dressed as Spider-Man. In a blink, he vanished into the forested silence of Kendal, New South Wales. Searches, suspects, accusations, years passed, still no answers, no child, no closure, just a haunting image, frozen in time. In early spring 2014, 3-year-old William Tyrell went missing from a house in Kendal, a seemingly typical Australian regional town on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. He has not been seen since, and yet everyone in Australia seems to know what he looks like. William is the boy with light brown hair, with wide eyes, his mouth agape, as if mid-roar, who wears a Spider-Man suit. Seen everywhere, found nowhere. It's been over a decade since the little boy was last seen when he vanished on the 12th of September 2014. William Tyrell was the foster child of 2 foster parents who cannot be named for legal purposes. He was in the care of his foster mother and grandmother and playing a game of hide-and-seek with his sister at the time of his disappearance. It was between 10 a.m. and 11 when William's 2 guardians were watching the siblings play outside at the grandmother's property in Kendal, New South Wales. The mother goes inside the home to fix a cup of tea, and after 5 minutes, she cannot hear William any longer. She begins searching the house and yard, but cannot find him anywhere. Shortly after, Tyrell's foster father returned after going to Lakewood on business and began searching the street and door-knocking neighbours. At 10:57, Tyrell's foster mother phoned 000 to report him missing. The New South Wales police force arrived at 11:06. His foster mother's last memory was that Tyrell was imitating a tiger's roar while running towards the side of the home, and then there was silence, and he just disappeared. His foster mother looked for him, but without success. Alleged prime suspects were named publicly only to be discounted later. New South Wales police officers were admonished by the Court of Appeal, and there were multiple searches for William's remains. According to an article from The Guardian, a former lead detective in the investigation claimed in his memoir that Kendal, the town where William disappeared, was far from normal, and instead, it was the home to so many known sex offenders that, quote, "It's as if they settled in this quiet overlooked backwater like mosquitoes," end quote. The police cleared Tyrell's family of any involvement in the disappearance and initially believed the boy was abducted by an opportunistic stranger who may have had connection with a pedophile ring. The foster parents were also suspected, and from what I could find, they were taken to court over the alleged mistreatment of the 2 children in their care. The foster mother did plead guilty, but were ultimately excluded from the investigation or suspect list. Whatever the case may be, poor young William Tyrell remains an unsolved missing person. The investigation is still ongoing. Number 7, Christopher Dale Flannery, aka Mr. Rent-A-Kill. A hitman, a ghost. Christopher Dale Flannery was Sydney's most feared gun for hire, linked to underworld slayings, corruption, terror. But in 1985, he disappeared. No body, no bullet, just whispers. Did someone silence the silencer? Or did Flannery become the ultimate vanishing act? Mr. Rent-A-Kill, Christopher Dale Flannery, alleged to be a hitman with over 15 kills. His price for a contract was believed to be $50,000 and bragged that, quote, anyone could be eliminated. Most definitely a cult of personality in the seedy underworld of Sydney during the 80s, it was almost certainly his ego that was his undoing. Reckless, charming, and connected, Flannery was the go-to hitman during the notorious and often overlooked Sydney gangland wars of the 1980s. Growing up tough and becoming somewhat of a failed armed robber, he positioned himself as a gun for hire and became very involved with underworld figures and even corrupt police. It was in May of 1985 that Flannery was staying low at a hotel apartment in Sydney's CBD that he received a call from his associate, or boss, George Freeman, asking for a meeting. Flannery, in leaving for the rendezvous, was unable to start his car. Flannery contacted Freeman, who told him to catch a taxi. Flannery did so. After exiting the Connaught where he lived onto Liverpool Street, he was never seen again. It has been claimed by notorious underworld figure Neddy Smith that police may have been responsible for Flannery's disappearance, as Smith noticed him enter a police car with officers he knew on May the 9th. The officers had allegedly offered to take Flannery to meet with Freeman. On the 6th of June 1997, a coroner handed down the finding that Flannery was murdered, most probably on or about 9th of May 1985. He also found that the key to solving this murder lay with disgraced detective Roger Rogerson. On the 22nd of February 2004, Rogerson told 7 Network Sunday program, quote, "Flannery was a complete pest. The guys up here in Sydney tried to settle him down. They tried to look after him as best they could, but he was, I believe, out of control. Maybe it was the Melbourne instinct in him coming out. He didn't want to do as he was told. He was out of control, and having overstepped that line, well, I suppose they said he had to go, but I can assure you I had nothing to do with it." End quote. Flannery left a wife and 2 children, and his disappearance only adds to the one of many mysteries that surround the criminal underworld of Sydney. Obvious rumours abound suggest that Rogerson was the one to do it and that he buried him at a beach on New South Wales, or that he was taken out to Sydney Heads and disposed of there. Rogerson later died last year in 2024, and the secrets may have gone to the grave with him. If you care to look at my full-length videos on these particular cases, and you can be bothered to read through the comments, you can find a plethora of conspiracies and theories as to what happened to Mr. Rentokil, which are very interesting, I must say. Number 6, Paddy Moriarty, The Outback Mystery. Larimer, Northern Territory, population 11. Then Paddy Moriarty and his dog vanished, left behind his hat and dinner on the table. A town feud, meat pie, and a suspected murder with no witnesses. Only one road in, one out, and still no trace. Like the Outback itself swallowed them both whole. 70-year-old Paddy Moriarty disappeared from the very small Northern Territory town of Larimer in December of 2017. This case gained a massive amount of media attention in Australia. Paddy, by all accounts, was a bit of a joker. He liked to have a few beers at the local. He mostly got on with everyone in the town, but he was known to start a bit of drama. I mean, what else are you going to do for fun in a town with only 11 people, right? He lived alone with his dog, Kelly, and had a few spats with his neighbour, Fran Hodgetts, who owned the pie shop across the road. His last sighting was at the Pink Panther Hotel in Larimer on December the 16th, 2017. After downing a few beers, he drove some 800 metres with his dog on the back of his quad bike. He wasn't seen again. After several days of no sighting, he was eventually reported as missing to the police. His house was searched and police found signs that he had in fact returned home, as there was dog food prepared and his wallet and hat on the table, which he never left without. The elephant in the room is obviously Fran Hodgetts and her live-in gardener Owen Laurie, who had a long history of beef, no pun intended, with the local larrikin. Police have suspected both of being involved, and a secretly recorded audio tape by police suggested that Laurie was singing about how he, quote, killerated Moriarty. A recent coroner's findings handed down to police suggest that Paddy was most likely murdered in the context of an ongoing feud within the small town, but could not legally elaborate on who was involved. While officially solved, Paddy and his dog have never been found, and the perpetrators have never been caught. Number 5, the McDougalls, the missing Doomsday Cult family. In 2007, 3 members of the McDougall family vanished from a remote Western Australian town. All they left was a few simple words on a note, and while authorities can't rule them out as dead, they can't rule them out as alive either. They were members of a New Age internet religion, or cult if you prefer that term. Simon, or Cy Cadwell, was originally from the UK and the leader of an online 40-member sect where he preached about the usual stuff. Apocalypse, God, a second coming, that sort of nonsense. It should be noted that Simon Cadwell wasn't his real name, and he was actually born as Gary Fenton. There were also reports of Cadwell being a con artist. He preached to his followers on a group forum called The Truth Fellowship from his rented house in Nannup, Western Australia, some 270 kilometres away from Perth. At some point, this must have attracted Chantal McDougall, who was originally from Victoria, because she shacked up with Cadwell and the two became parents to daughter Leela. They relocated from Perth to the small town of Nannup, 270 kilometres south of Perth. They rented a house there, and another of Cadwell's disciples, Antonio Popich, lived in a caravan in the backyard. In 2006, Cadwell began telling his neighbours and others in their community that the little family, along with Antonio Popich, were going to relocate to Brazil. The four fled their home in the nearby town of Nannup in July 2007, leaving behind wallets, credit cards, food in the fridge, dirty dishes on the table, and a note that simply read, "Gone to Brazil." Ms. McDougall told her mother Kathy that they were going away on holiday to Brazil. They called their real estate agent to say they were leaving and he could have their furniture, packed up their belongings, and on July the 13th, 2007, travelled to Busselton, where they sold their car. This was the last time they were seen. Chantal's father reported his daughter and granddaughter missing in October of that same year, when the McDougall family had not heard from either them or Cadwell. Police investigations proved unfruitful and their whereabouts have never been found. Passports had not been used to fly out of the country and their bank accounts have not been touched. A trail of digital breadcrumbs may be the clue to solving this baffling case. Prior to their disappearance, Mr. Cadwell told a woman in his online cult forum that he was, quote, planning a peaceful suicide pact. When the woman mentioned that this would amount to murdering his young daughter, Mr. Cadwell revoked his idea and said they would instead moved to an isolated area where they could not be reached. Police discovered a call was made from their Nannup home to Trans WA on July the 12th to book a bus ticket from Bridgetown to Northcliffe under the name J. Roberts. The ticket was never used. However, 2 train tickets booked under that name were redeemed on the morning of July 16th, one going from East Perth to Kalgoorlie, the other one from Perth to Northcliffe. It was established that a passenger under that name got off at Northcliffe and someone boarded the train to Kalgoorlie, but there's no evidence that they got to the final destination. Mr. Popich's mobile phone was traced to Perth on July the 15th. It was used to call a backpackers accommodation, Domino's Pizza, and a gay bar called the Court Hotel. His driver's license was also used to check into a hostel in Northbridge. Police have not ruled anything out, but say it is likely they were Mr. Popich's movements because the Domino's delivery driver later identified him as the one he delivered a pizza to in Kings Park. Mr. Popich was also gay, so the phone call to the Court Hotel provided a vital clue. On July the 16th, his phone was used to call Trans WA. To this day, it has not been established why Mr. Popich would try to conceal his identity to catch public transport, or what happened to him after July the 16th. Western Australia Police investigated whether they snuck out of Australia and travelled to Brazil to live in a commune on the outskirts of Rio Branco, a town in the Amazon rainforest that is home to syncretic religious cults. A few years after they went missing, it was discovered the cult leader had stolen his identity from a former colleague, and reports abound about him being a con artist. Amateur sleuths also argued over the group's fate in online private investigative forums, putting forward the idea that they had been aboard an Airbus plane that crashed and exploded, killing all on board in Sao Paulo, Brazil in 2007. To this date, the investigation is ongoing, and even a coroner could not rule without any possibility of doubt that they were dead, so it remains unsolved. Number 4. Revelle Balmain, the dancer who disappeared. 1994. Revelle Balmain was a model, a dancer, and an escort. She never returned from a client meeting in Sydney. Her shoes, bag, and keys scattered on the street. A phone call cut short, a life undone. Her case remains open. The city saw everything and nothing. Revelle Sabine Balmain, a model and dancer, was preparing to embark on a 6-month dance contract in Japan and had planned to meet a girlfriend on the night of November the 5th, 1994, for a drink, but she never showed up. 2 days later, one of her cork high heels, makeup bag, diary, and the keys to her Bellevue Hill unit were found scattered along 4 Kingsford streets in Sydney's southeast. The striking blonde beauty had been secretly working as a high-end escort for 2 agencies and had gone to see a client, Gavin Samer, at his home in McNair Avenue in Kingsford on the night she disappeared. The 22-year-old, who had recently started dating a new boyfriend, had told friends she had planned to quit prostitution after that shift. Mr. Samer, the last person to see her alive, has always maintained to police that he then drove Revelle to the nearby Red Tomato Inn at 7 p.m. that evening, but no one from the inn ever saw her. He was named the main person of interest during a coronial inquiry in 1998 and 1999, but no charges against him were ever laid. Mr. Samer has always denied being involved in her disappearance. Balmain's disappearance hung over the city for 3 decades. Balmain's face has become a fixture on lists of cold cases, missing persons appeals, and even conspiracy theories, but there have been few signs of meaningful progress since 1999. Number 3. Harold Holt, the Prime Minister who disappeared. December the 17th, 1967, Prime Minister Harold Holt goes for a swim at Cheviot Beach. Waves crash, currents pull, and Holt vanishes. No body, no official explanation. Some say drowning. Others, CIA extraction, Chinese submarine, and naturally an alien abduction. The truth might lie beneath the waves, or nowhere at all. This was during a time of Cold War tensions, spies, the Vietnam War, the Summer of Love, and one of the shortest terms in office for an Australian Prime Minister. Harold Holt was only in office for just over a year before he mysteriously vanished at Cheviot Beach on the Mornington Peninsula in December of 1967. A keen swimmer, Harold was holidaying in Victoria's Mornington Peninsula when on the morning of December the 16th he decides to take a day out and visit the nearby beaches, briefly catching up with old acquaintances first and then later taking a dip at Cheviot Beach. It should be noted that prior to this, Holt's doctor informed against any water-based recreation as his shoulder was on the mend from an earlier accident. Holt went out with a mate of his who stayed closer to the shore, but Holt swam out deeper and appears to have got caught in a rip. Eventually, he disappeared from view. This sparked a massive search and one of the biggest in Australian history, but alas, Holt's body was never found. In most cases where a person drowns at sea, they usually sink to the bottom before their remains fill up with gas and then float to the surface. Eventually, and almost in all cases, the body will be carried back to shore by the currents. So, where is Harold Holt? This sparked a lot of theories and even conspiracies as to what happened to the Prime Minister. Sharks? It's quite possible. However, some theories range from Chinese submarines, alien abductions, to CIA involvement wanting to quash some anti-war agenda and replace the leader of Australia with someone more malleable. Harold Holt was officially ruled dead by a coroner sometime later, and they found that the cause was an accidental drowning. What's ironic about this is that there's actually a swimming pool named after him. Classy, guys. There was also a naval spy base in Western Australia named after him that involved some freaky UFO encounter. I've done a whole video on that, so go and check that out if you're interested. Link below. Number 2. The Beaumont Children. Innocence stolen. Australia Day 1966. 3 children, Jane, Anna, Grant, walked to Glenelg Beach and never returned. Seen with a tall blonde man, then gone. Despite nationwide searches, psychic consultations, and even digging under a factory floor, not a single trace. Their story haunts a nation. The case that stole Australia's innocence. One of Australia's biggest missing persons cases that people still talk about today, almost 60 years on. I get a lot of comments about this one in previous videos where people who were alive during that time often describe how Australia lost its innocence that day. A time when doors were left unlocked and children played outside or away from the home unsupervised and nobody blinked an eye. This case changed all of that. It was the morning of Australia Day 1966 when mother of 3, Nancy Beaumont, entrusted her responsible eldest child, Jane Beaumont, aged 9, with taking her younger siblings to the nearby Glenelg Beach unsupervised. Just the day before, they had made the short trip back from the beach to their home in the Adelaide suburb of Adelaide Park. So Jane, Anna and Grant Beaumont take a 5-minute bus ride to the beach, caught the 8:45 a.m. bus and were expected to return home on the 12 p.m. bus. When the children didn't return on either the 12 noon or the 2 p.m. bus, their mother Nancy became extremely worried. When Father Jim Beaumont returned home at 3 p.m, he immediately drove to the crowded beach, but he was unable to locate his children. At around 5:30 p.m, the parents went to Glenelg Police Station to report the disappearance. Police searched the beach and the surrounding areas initially, thinking that the children had simply lost track of time. As the search expanded, fears had now arisen and an accident or kidnap was suspected. Within 24 hours, the entire nation was aware of the missing children. After 3 days of no sign of the Beaumont children, media outlets began running with the narrative of a sex crime as a possible motive for an abduction. Several witnesses who had seen the children in Collie Reserve near Glenelg Beach told police that they saw the trio in the company of a tall man with fair to light brown hair and a thin face in his mid-30s. The witnesses claimed that the children were playing with them and appeared to be relaxed and enjoying themselves. The man, who was also said to approach the witnesses and ask them if anyone had seen the children's belongings, as their money was missing. The group was then seen walking away from the beach sometime later. Police estimated this time to be around 12:15 p.m. The Beaumont's parents described their children as shy, and for them to be playing so confidently with a stranger was very much out of character. Investigators theorized that the children had perhaps met the man during previous visits and had grown to trust him. A chance remark at home, which seemed insignificant at the time, supports this theory, that Anna had told her mother that Jane had, quote, got a boyfriend down at the beach. Nancy thought that her daughter had made a playmate and thought nothing more of it until after the disappearance. Later investigations were halted by hoax letters and unreliable witnesses. As stated before, possible remains were thought to be buried under a factory in North Plimpton. In November 2013, a 1 metre squared section of a factory in North Plimpton, which had been owned by one of the police's persons of interest, was excavated. A ground-penetrating radar found one small anomaly which can indicate movement or objects within the soil, but the dig found no additional evidence and investigations into the site were closed. However, on January the 22nd, 2018, Adelaide detectives announced that they would return to the factory site and conduct further excavations after a private investigation sponsored by Channel 7 in Adelaide. The excavation on the 2nd of February 2018 took 9 hours. Animal bones and general rubbish were found, but nothing related to the Beaumont case. In February 2025, again based on new evidence, South Australian MP Frank Pangello organised a third privately funded excavation at the site. The week-long search did not find any remains of the children. The Beaumont case resulted in one of the largest police investigations in Australian criminal history and today remains one of Australia's most infamous cold cases. Almost 60 years on, the tragic and mysterious case of the Beaumont children remains unsolved. Number 1. Frederick Valentich, Lost in the Sky. Yeah, you knew this one was coming. 1978, pilot Frederick Valentich was flying over the Bass Strait when he radioed in. Strange lights, a metallic object, then silence. Only 20 years old, his last words were, "It's not an aircraft." Wreckage? Never found. Frederick vanished, but the mystery remains in the skies above. Damn, man! Welcome to the Repeat Offenders Club here on Shadow Matter. I've lost count of how many times I've actually spoken about this case. It is a doozy though, so that's why it's at number 1. It really is truly bizarre. 20-year-old Frederick Valentich was a pilot who was looking to increase his flight time hours and disappeared flying over the Bass Strait. His final radio transmission back to the mainland reads as an eerie situation that he seemed to have found himself in. Valentich's last words were, "It's not an aircraft." In October 1978, Valentich was on a 235-kilometre training flight from Moorabbin in Victoria to his intended final destination, King Island, in the Bass Strait. What should have been a routine flight quickly turned into a scary situation. Valentich radioed Melbourne Flight Service at 7:06 p.m. to report an unidentified aircraft was following him at 4,500 feet. He was told that there were no known traffic at that level. Valentich then told them that he could see a large unknown aircraft which appeared to be illuminated by 4 bright landing lights. He was unable to confirm its type but said it passed about 1,000 feet overhead and was moving at a high speed. Valentich then reported the aircraft was approaching him from the east and said that the pilot might be toying with him. Then Valentich reported that the aircraft was orbiting him from above. When he asked to describe the aircraft, Valentich replied, "It's not an aircraft." His transmission was then interrupted by an unidentified noise described as being a metallic scraping sound, and then transmission was lost. 20-year-old Frederick Valentich was never seen or heard from again. Theories to his disappearance range from Valentich staging his death to an abduction by aliens or perhaps being lost and disorientated. Valentich's remains and whereabouts of his plane are still to be found. And that is today's episode. I hope you enjoyed watching, and thanks for coming to chill out with me in the dark. If you like this kind of content, please remember to like, subscribe, and slap that bell, and I'll see you here next time in the shadows.